Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is Charmed Season 4, Episode 14, Merry Go Round. Episode in a nutshell is a brief reminder of what happens in the series. So, at the beginning of this series, we see Phoebe and her sisters preparing for her wedding and hoping that nothing will go wrong, famous last words. And we then see Cole in the underworld with the seer, who reveals that she's had a vision that Phoebe and Cole will have a son who is the most powerful magical child that will ever exist. But if he marries her in holy matrimony, a light ceremony, then the child will be the heir to the Charmed One's destiny. So, in order for the child to be his heir, the heir to the throne of the Source, they need to be married in a dark ceremony, and this requires that it take place at night in a cemetery and that he drinks his wife's blood during the ceremony. This leads to them coming up with a plan to trick Phoebe into having a dark ceremony instead of a light one, and this leads to Cole then sabotaging his own wedding with the use of a Lazarus demon, which resurrect unless buried in a cemetery, and that is a way for them to both interfere with the wedding and also get everybody to the cemetery. So, in order to make it clear that someone doesn't want the wedding to go through, Cole frames Paige for picking up the wrong dress when she picked up the right one, and also frames Paige for giving Phoebe acne through her face cream by casting a spell on the face cream, and then when they try to rectify the acne, it ends up with Phoebe turning invisible, and this almost cancels the wedding because none of the reversal spells they try work. But then Paige comes up with the idea that she'll be the fairy godmother and that she'll transfer the invisibility to herself, which she does do, and that allows the ceremony to start proceeding. But then the Lazarus demon does attack again, and Paige, while fighting the Lazarus demon, does end up injured, and because she's invisible, they almost lose her because they don't know where she is. Luckily, the pool of blood is noticed, and Leo heals her in time, and Phoebe then, final straw, calls off the wedding so that they can take the Lazarus demon into the cemetery, which they do, and then Paige has the idea to question the Lazarus demon on who sent him, and he immediately points out Cole. So Cole then pretends to be the seer so that they think the seer did it, and she says, "Oh, well, I had a vision. If you marry Cole on this day, you'll become a much stronger witch, and I can't let that happen. It's too much of a threat to us. I wanted to stop the wedding, and I did. Haha." And then she leaves. Cole pretends to have been knocked out in the mausoleum so that the seer could take over his appearance. They then bury the demon, go into the mausoleum, and once they are there, they happen to notice that there is a cute little chapel there, that it currently has a priest. And so they decide to have the wedding there in a cemetery at night. And Cole gives Phoebe a rose, and she pulls off the stem so that she can tuck it into his suit. And as she does so, she cuts herself on a thorn, and he sucks the blood from her thumb into his mouth, fulfilling all of the conditions for a dark ceremony, which then proceeds with all the people on the good side none the wiser. And that is how we end this episode. So now that we've been reminded about what happened in the episode, it is now time to rank the episode. And as always, we will be ranking on our mostly objective ranking list, followed then by the personal ranking list. And on our mostly objective rank values, we have our multi-season main character development. And this is when Phoebe turns invisible, and Paige then turns invisible when she transfers it to her. And that's worth 4 points. We have the world building, where we learn that there is a method of marriage, a dark ceremony, and we did see a little bit of this in the past with Prue. However, that was obviously a very different type of ceremony, as there was no blood drinking involved or cemetery involved, etc. And that was through a high priestess. This time it's a different type of dark ceremony, but this one has a dark wedding at night in a cemetery where the groom has to drink the blood, and it is also revealed that in a wedding between good and evil, with a type of ceremony apparently determines what the moral leaning of the child will be. So if it's a dark ceremony, the child will be evil. If it's a light ceremony, the child will be good. Um, Rather than, how it's nurtured or raised, it all comes down to how the parents married. And then we have our main relationship development, which has, of course, Phoebe and Cole getting married, taking that milestone in their relationship. And that brings us up to 12 points. However, there were a couple negatives in the episode. Obviously, there's the framing and gaslighting of Paige and Phoebe to turn them against each other, which I honestly don't understand why that step was necessary, since they wanted them to know that they were under attack and that someone was trying to stop the wedding. So why they had to go through that whole framing bit, I feel like Cole just has a personal grudge against Paige because Paige has been suspicious of him for a while. Or not like openly suspicious, but she hasn't forgotten that Cole was once a demon and is more open to him turning evil again than any of the others, which we will see going forward. But basically that happens, and then another -2 points for the wedding sabotage and overall manipulation of the wedding in order to create this dark ceremony. And that then brings us to an 8 out of 10 for the episode. Because it is an 8 out of 10, on our mostly objective ranking, we have first Charmed Again, Hell Hath No Fury, Enter the Demon, A Night to Remember, Lost and Bound, Charmed and Dangerous, A Page from the Past, Size Matters, Brain Drain. This episode is all the way down at 10th, Merry Go Round, Muse to My Ears, Black as Coal, Trial by Magic, and then in 14th we have The Three Faces of Phoebe. For my personal ranking, I do enjoy this episode. I love the vibes of the dark wedding and the like cozy little chapel. I like how they kind of filmed it somewhat in slow motion to show exactly when like the fingers cut. I didn't necessarily enjoy all of the gaslighting and turning against each other and manipulations, but I also understand why they did it. But the biggest question I had about this episode is how did they pay for it? Because as far as I'm aware in this series so far, Phoebe and Cole are both still unemployed. So how are they getting this nice venue, all of these flowers, which are really expensive, a caterer, a DJ, all like even Piper, who has a successful business, her wedding wasn't even that grand or large, and I just don't know how they're paying for it. Are they going into debt for it? Who would have approved that kind of credit when they have no jobs? I just feel like the suspension of disbelief was a little bit pulled back because how are they affording it? Oh, and Cole's staying at a hotel even the night before. How is he affording it? And no one in the series seems to question how he managed to afford this or how Phoebe and Cole managed to pay for their wedding. So it's a bit suspicious. And like I said, suspension of disbelief, a little bit pulled back on it. However, I think the original wedding idea was really nice. I liked the little chapel that they ended up getting married in the dark ceremony. I like the concept. I like the foreshadowing for a very powerful boy child. Phoebe's evil, but obviously we also know that there is going to be a very powerful boy child in the future. And so I kind of like how they're foreshadowing that, how Paige is getting also foreshadowing with her tarot reading of how they were lovers. Currently, there's going to be despair and then in the future, death. And because Cole is the source, we kind of know that is going to be the case, and yet the sisters are completely unaware of it at this time. So for them, it's like maybe it's a wrong reading, but then we as the audience know how it turns out, and so know that it's an accurate reading. And also, if it was the first watch through and we didn't know where things were going, it's an excellent way to foreshadow that the ending between Cole and Phoebe isn't necessarily going to be the most happy one. So all told, I do think it was a very good episode. I gave it a 9 out of 10 because I can't overlook the fact that there were some problems, especially with the suspension of disbelief in how did they afford this when they're both seemingly unemployed at the moment. Or at least as the audience, I have not been told that either of them are employed. Therefore, as far as I'm aware, neither one of them is. But that brings the personal ranking to in first, Hell Hath No Fury. Charmed again in second. I put this episode in third, Merry Go Round, followed by A Night to Remember, Charmed and Dangerous, Lost and Bound, Size Matters, Muse to My Ears, A Page from the Past, Brain Drain, Enter the Demon, The Three Faces of Phoebe, Black as Coal, and then in 14th we have Trial by Magic. And that brings us now to the final segment, our series ranking so far. On the mostly objective ranking, the seasons are pretty much in order, 3, 2, 1. And season 4 so far has a score of 109 out of a possible 210. On the personal ranking side, however, the seasons are in order 3, 1, and then 2. And season 4 so far has a score of 86 out of a possible 210. But with that, we have now rewatched and ranked Charmed Season 4, Episode 14, Merry Go Round. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the next episode.